In the face of a devastating cholera epidemic, Don Bosco and his boys showed extraordinary courage and compassion, earning the gratitude of an entire city. Join us as we discover what action inspired a glowing newspaper report of the oratory. The Miracles and Prophecies of St. John Bosco, a project of America Needs Fatima. I'm your host, Adrian Fonseca. Subscribe for new episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Today we'll dive into a remarkable account from 1854 during the height of a cholera epidemic in Europe. A leading Turin newspaper, La Harmonia, praised Don Bosco and his boys for their invaluable assistance to the sick and the dying. Before we start, here are a few key takeaways to keep in mind during the video. One might be the power of faith in action in times of crisis, the importance of community and selflessness, and here's a question for you. How can we apply the selfless dedication of Don Bosco and his boys to our own lives and serving our communities? And if you find this story inspiring, consider becoming a monthly promoter to help support the ongoing mission inspired by Don Bosco. The details are in the description box down below, but now let's get into the story. From 1846 to 1860, a cholera epidemic raged throughout Europe. The help given by the oratory boys to the cholera victims was so vital that it deserved special mention in the leading Turin newspaper, Harmonia, which is Italian for harmony. In an article of September 16, 1854, number 112, it commented on the generous assistance of the clergy during the epidemic. I will read you the pertinent paragraphs here to show you just how grateful the city was for them. In reporting the assistance given by the clergy during the cholera epidemic, we have so far merely mentioned the help offered by many clergymen, such as the Dominican Fathers and the Oblates of Mary. But if the mildness of the epidemic in the downtown section did not offer Turin clergy the opportunity to fully display their zeal, the little they were able to do was a sign of how much more they would have done had the need arisen. First of all, we wish to report how the clergy managed to dispel the people's old wives' tales about doctors and medicines. And despite the smear campaign of the anti-clerical press, the cholera victims in the city slums welcomed the priest with open arms. But through ignorance, they slammed their doors when a physician tried to enter. However, one word from a priest was enough to persuade the sick to admit a doctor and to take medicine, even though they had up to then abhorred both even more than the plague. Rather than enumerate the good works of the clergy, we shall illustrate them by describing their work in the emergency medical station of Borgo San Donato, which was entrusted to the care of Father Galvagno and Don Bosco, the founder and director of the Oratory of St. Francis de Sales. For several weeks, they subsisted on no more than snatches of rest at night. Fully clothed, usually squeezed in between 3 or 4 calls. Moreover, Don Bosco persuaded 14 of his boys to volunteer their services to the health department for work in the medical centers or in private homes. They were sufficiently trained to offer spiritual and material assistance. Inspired by Don Bosco's example, whom they regard more as a father than a superior, they bravely went to the aid of the sick and restored their courage and confidence by talking to them and massaging their hands with no repugnance or fear. When visiting victims who were confined to their homes, they would promptly urge the frightened relatives and servants to leave if they wanted to do so while they ministered to the sick. If the patients were female, they would ask a family member to remain. If not at the bedside, at least in the room. In case of death, they would even lay out the bodies of their own sex for burial. As an aside, that was opposed to if there was of the opposite sex, for it would be inappropriate to lay out the bodies of a woman being young boys. To continue the article, in addition to the 14 volunteers, Don Bosco had a reserve of 30 similarly trained standbys who were always ready to join their companions. Don Bosco's immediate concern for the victims of cholera in Turin did not keep him from trying to help out-of-town victims. When he learned that the epidemic was also raging in Pinerolo, he wrote to the mayor of that town and offered the services of his young trainees. In a letter from Niccolò Tommasio, the famous Italian linguist, journalist, and essayist, we discovered another mention of these events, of which Don Bosco could be justly proud. Tommasio arrived in Turin in 1854 and lived there until 1859. Here's the letter. Turin, October 3rd, 1854. Very Reverend Father, if you happen to have volumes 11 through 16 of Rosmini's works, would you be kind enough to lend them to me? At least one at a time. My eye trouble and other slight occasional indispositions prevent me from coming to ask you personally. May I also offer my belated thanks for your gracious gift of books. I am happy to say that my two stepsons are employed respectively in print shops and a bookbinding shop. Both live with me. I have heard of your self-sacrifice and that of your boys during the cholera epidemic, which particularly plagued the poor of the city. As a Christian, I offer you my heartfelt thanks. Should the bearer of this letter not find you at home, kindly drop me a line in reply at 22 Via Dora Grossa. Very sincerely yours, Niccolò Tommasio. Meanwhile, Don Bosco's ministry to the cholera victims had not prevented him from readying for the press the 2 September issues of Lettoria Cattolique, bound in one anonymous booklet entitled Trafficking in Souls. The following is an excerpt from that booklet. With 30 pieces of silver, like Judas, the Waldensians seek to bribe Catholics, and especially the poor, to deny Jesus Christ and his church. Although many are Protestants in good faith, the leaders of the various sects believe neither in the Bible nor in God. While they are in hopeless disagreement in matters of belief, they are united on one point: their venomous hatred of the Catholic Church. Protestant ministers, catechists, and missionaries do not act in good faith for 2 reasons. First, their untenable principle of free thinking denies the infallibility of the Pope and the Church, while granting it to every illiterate dolt. Second, their motive is the handsome remuneration that they receive. Their purpose is not to convert sinners, but to corrupt innocent, unsuspecting souls and persuade them to rebel against the truth. Their model is Satan, who deceived our first parents in Eden. They knowingly ape his evil ways, ever vigilant in protecting his fellow man from dangers to both body and soul. Saint Don Bosco was truly a walking miracle. As we can see from today's letters and other primary source documents, he and his boys appeared untiring in their relentless service to victims of both cholera and even more insidious disease, heresy. Don Bosco was quoted as saying, "True religion is not a matter of words. There must be deeds." Now a question for you. To what deeds is Our Lady calling you today? To what deeds is Our Lady calling you? Indeed, perhaps like Don Bosco and his boys, who exemplified selflessness and courage during one of the most trying times in Europe, you too can show selflessness and courage by becoming a monthly promoter of St. John Bosco. As a monthly promoter, you'll receive spiritual benefits, including Mass remembrances and daily rosary intentions, And depending on your level of support, you may also receive beautiful religious items and books about Don Bosco's life and teachings, connecting you tangibly to his enduring work. One of my favorites is actually this photograph of Don Bosco. It inspires me to work hard when I'm feeling down. Your monthly gift, no matter the amount, makes a real difference in young lives, helping to shape future generations with Don Bosco's values and wisdom. The link to become a donor is in the description box down below, so join us in this vital mission and be a part of Don Bosco's lasting impact on the world. Today we've explored a powerful story of faith in action during the cholera epidemic of the mid-19th century. Don Bosco and his boys showed extraordinary bravery and compassion, earning the gratitude of an entire city and the admiration of many. The key lesson from today's story is the impact of selfless service and confidence in divine providence in times of crises. Don Bosco's example challenges us to look for ways that we can serve others, especially in difficult times. But what did you think about today's episode? What stood out to you the most? Leave a comment in the comment section down below because I would love to know what you think, and I try to reply to as many comments as I can. Thank you for joining me today. St. John Bosco, pray for us. May God bless you, and Mary Immaculate keep you under her mantle. God love you.